The Protectors was Gerry Anderson's second fully live-action television series, but despite being one of the most successful, relatively few people know that it was one of his shows.
Well, you might have mentioned it.
This is perhaps due to it not being the usual science fiction fare he was best known for, but instead a contemporary thriller series more along the lines of ITC's more conventional action shows like The Saint or Department S.
That's correct. Salute.
Sante.
First airing in 1972, the series centred around an international detective organisation known as The Protectors, established by American detective Harry Rule.
Hello, Harry. It's good to see you.
And swinging London, hello. We're not going to have much time to swing. We got an important tonight.
Believing that a private organisation could operate more efficiently outside of the law, Rule enlisted a network of protector agents in major cities all across the globe, but he would most often be seen working with two colleagues in particular. Rome-based protector Contessa Caroline di Contini, essentially a live-action Lady Penelope,
You quite obviously know all about me.
and French protector Paul Boucher.
Where do you come from?
Paris.
Armed with their wits and ingenuity, together with a gadget or two, the Protectors are ready to take on the very worst of the world's criminal underworld.
Crime is no life for a dog, George.
The series was not an original concept of Anderson's, but instead one he was handed by ITC head Lou Grade shortly after production concluded on UFO.
I see no reason why I should get involved.
Is £75,000 a good enough reason?
I see a reason.
Grade also hired two of the show's three leads.
My name is Napoleon Solo.
Robert Vaughn, then best known to television audiences for his recent 4-year stint as Napoleon Solo in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., was to play Harry Rule.
I still had a lot of problems in the United States in terms of everything that was going on there. And I was offered this television show in London that would be filmed in London and on the continent, in Europe. And I thought, well, this would be a good thing for me to be able to get away from the country for a while and work in England, because I always loved working in England. I just loved it.
While Nairi Dawn Porter was cast as the Contessa di Contini.
Sounds as though it might be fun.
Tony Anholt would play Paul Boucher,
You let me know if you hear anything, all right?
while also along for the ride were Anthony Chin as the Contessa's bodyguard and chauffeur Chino, Yasuko Nagazumi as Harry's secretary Suki,
Mr. Rule's residence?
and Harry's dog Gus. Throughout the 1960s, ITC heroes such as the famous Simon Templar and Danger Man John Drake had travelled all across the globe, but in reality, Roger Moore and Patrick McGoohan had rarely enjoyed the luxury of foreign location filming. However, as the 1970s dawned, Lou Grade was keen to change all that. His latest batch of globe-trotting action-adventure shows would be shot on location as much as possible. But in order to achieve this, productions would have to save money elsewhere. Of these 4 new shows, The Persuaders would be shot on 35mm film as normal.
He makes it sound like we won first prize.
But the remaining 3, including The Protectors, would be shot on cheaper and noticeably inferior 16mm film.
Your strategy, as usual, is transparently obvious.
While the picture quality of the show certainly isn't the best, there's no denying that overall, the series benefited from being able to film in places such as Rome, Copenhagen, Venice, Madrid, and more over the course of its run.
In our partner's varied career, was she ever on the stage?
Why do you say that?
Well, in the time I've known her, she's never failed to make a grand entrance.
Further impacting on the show's chances of success was the requirement that each episode of The Protectors would run for just 25 minutes.
Very little time.
Despite this handicap, which often led to massive info dumps in order to get the plot going,
Oh, wait a minute, let me get this straight.
the very best episodes of the show proved that the shorter running time need not be a hindrance to good storytelling, even if some of the worst episodes do border on genuinely incomprehensible.
Sometimes it is better not to question.
The somewhat vague nature of the show's premise allowed the writers free rein to tell a wide variety of stories.
Somebody just hijacked the mountain. Are you serious?
From standard drug smuggling and kidnap plots to a standout story about post-traumatic stress disorder in a Vietnam War veteran,
Young kids. They're just kids.
and even to the occasional and largely misguided attempt at comedy, most notably in an episode directed by Robert Vaughn himself, which Lou Grade later correctly described as the very worst episode he had ever seen of anything. The series also enjoyed an impressive lineup of guest stars, including a large number of familiar faces and voices from previous Anderson shows.
Nice grouping.
Having 3 main characters also allowed for episodes to be written that spotlighted only 1 or 2 of them, so as to give the lead actors regular time off. This would prove to be a godsend for what would turn out to be a rather unhappy production, with many stories emerging over the years of on-set battles, such as Vaughan vs. Anderson, Vaughan vs. Grade, Porter vs. Anderson, and Vaughan's business partner Sherwood Price vs. everybody.
Get away from me!
Despite behind-the-scenes problems, The Protectors performed well in the ratings in both the UK and around the world, so much so that a second season was quickly commissioned, albeit with some minor changes to the format.
Did you do that?
The characters of Chino and Suki were dropped, as was the computer bank prop on the set of Harry's apartment, and no further mention was made of any other Protectors beyond the 3 main characters. The tone of the stories became more serious than those of the first season, leading to frequent downbeat endings that often featured somebody sobbing over the body of a loved one. But this hinted that perhaps the writers were aware that the era of the TV globe-trotting Playboy super spy was coming to an end, and knew that the show would have to adapt in order to survive.
All planned out.
The public was still hungry for more, and things were all set for a 3rd season when co-financiers Fabergé pulled out of the production at the last moment. The Protectors had solved their last case.
Well, yesterday is now the past.
Despite this abrupt cancellation, The Protectors still holds the distinction of being the Gerry Anderson series with the highest number of television episodes currently in existence, at 52.
All right, Harry, you've had your happy ending. Now what about the rest of the story?
Although the series was never a huge merchandising hit in its day, The Protectors continued their adventures in book and comic strip form. But the show's biggest and most lasting success came in the form of Tony Christie's bold and brassy end title song, Avenues and Alleyways.
In the avenues and alleyways, while you sleep, there's the whole world coming alive.
In the decades since its original broadcast, The Protectors has enjoyed frequent repeat runs, and all 52 episodes are available on DVD. Although often overlooked by Anderson fans for being so unlike his other series, the show still has plenty to offer, including some terrific action set pieces, stunning location filming, and a trio of extremely likeable central characters.
Thanks, Harry. All of you. Thanks for everything.
At a time when ITC was struggling to produce decent, or even watchable, action shows, Gerry Anderson was handed a blank slate of a concept and brought to it the same perfectionism as he did to all his other series, with the very best episodes of The Protectors being a more than worthy addition to his television legacy.